When I think of my nostalgia for A Way Out, I remember a really enjoyable co-op experience with Dante. We got to delve through a story I liked and engaged in a lot of very silly scenarios and minigames. I also remember Dante choosing middle, something I will never forget, and certainly never forgive. And after rewatching my playthrough, I've decided to place it ahead of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Here's why. While playing through the game, it was very clear to both myself and Dante that we were going to get a solid co-op experience, but were ill-prepared for what awaited us. At several junctures in the game, we were constantly surprised at various aspects presented to us, ranging from NPC dialogue to minigames or just the framing that the game has laid out with the split screen. I was very engaged with the gameplay and felt genuinely interested in the two characters, how their story was going to develop, and perhaps the biggest mystery of them all, how it would come to a close. As both Dante and I were on the plane after the mansion assault, we felt a big moment had just passed us, but what awaited us once we touched down would still be a mystery. And then the twist happened where Vincent, which was the character I was playing, turned out to be a police officer. Suddenly, a game that was just a solid co-op experience became amazing as we both began to recognize what the game had done to us. In my final thoughts, I had noted that the game set up the twist perfectly. Throughout the entire experience, Dante and I were pitted against one another, minigames, decision-making, and even split-screen space. These were all small interactions that felt insignificant in the moment, but really came together for the twist moment. In the end, I couldn't win my battle against Dante and Leo kills Vincent. This then turned into a touching moment where Dante even remarked that he regretted going through with it because of the scene with the note, and I felt a similar way. We had both just witnessed a really sad moment where one of our characters' story had come to a close, and the game did it really well. The rewatch experience certainly wasn't as impactful as when I played the game, but there were still some teeth-clenching moments in there. The first 30 minutes of the playthrough were off to a slow start as setup and introductions were being made. This ultimately was a very minor thing, but it did take a bit for it to ramp up from the start. I was definitely continually impressed by the mechanics of the game. In particular, the split-screen usage was absolutely brilliant and something I have never seen done in a game before. It was cool to see one side of the screen get smaller when a more important scene was happening for the other character, or sometimes just get completely removed to focus on what was going on. In other sections, we got 3 screens at the same time while Dante and my past self were running away from a hitman. Then there was the hospital chase scene where the camera would focus on one of us, but seamlessly transition between us for our sections. On top of all that, there was a brief side-scroller and even a large overhead camera shot that was just wonderfully done. I also felt like the minigames offered a lot to the experience. They never really repeated and were always different to some degree while providing a nice break from the story. And speaking of which, I thought it played out quite well. There were certainly moments where we would suspend disbelief, such as Leo's escape from the hospital, but we got time to care for both characters in meaningful ways and I enjoyed that. Based on memory, I ranked A Way Out at 25 out of 117 and I think this will be a fierce competitor for many games out there. Co-op games sort of have an unfair advantage in that I'm playing a game with someone who is inherently making it more fun, so that is certainly something to consider. Still, the game wasn't perfect. My past self remarked on some challenges not quite hitting the mark, such as the rowboat scene, effectively every gun-heavy scene, and most of the chase scenes. They were either not as tightly tuned, very unfamiliar, and/or overstayed their welcome. Yet, even with all that in mind, the game really outdid itself. So I think A Way Out comes ahead of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Both of these games provided a unique experience for me that I covet, but A Way Out receives the unfair co-op advantage that pushes it ahead. That advantage falls short of Tales of Berseria though, as I feel it had less stumbles across its lengthier playtime.